Hi all, you're very welcome to episode 5 of the 3D Design Bureau podcast. We shoot the breeze on all things surrounding the AEC sector and 3D design. We release it every second Thursday morning and it's wherever you find your podcast. Today we're joined by the usual suspect of Nick, and we have Louise, Rankin and Lauren Martin from North Design, interior designers. So Lauren, Louise, how are you?
Good. Excited to be on.
You're very welcome along. We're very excited to have you.
Yeah, good, thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
How's life?
Good, yes, busy.
Flat to the mat.
Yeah. No, but it's good. We're lucky enough to be busy, and especially with the run up to Christmas now, it's always a little bit frantic. But yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, and Louise is very busy.
Yeah.
A month out from expecting, so congratulations, Louise.
Well, Lauren's about to get much busier then after that.
Totally taking up the slack.
I know. Poor girl. Keep checking in with her sanity in January.
Good stuff. Well, guys, I'm sure a lot of people in Ireland, our clients included, are familiar with your work. But if you wanted to just give us a quick overview of how you got started and what North Design does.
Yeah. So I suppose North Design, in short, is an interior architecture firm. So we do anything from interiors from residentials to hospitality, hotels, offices, everything in between. I suppose how we started North Design, going back, Louise and I have always been quite influenced in design. Both of our families kind of worked in the design field, although it didn't kind of start that way for both of us. I'll let Louise talk about her path in a minute, but I started when I left college. I went into business in college, and then I did Montessori teaching, and I found out that was not the path for me. But I was always very creative, and I probably should have done that from the beginning, but I always think it's hard to know what you want to do from the beginning. Then I went into college. I did interior architecture and furniture design in DIT, and I absolutely loved it. Kind of from day one, I knew that was the right thing for me. So then worked in the industry, and that's where I met Louise. Mm-hmm. So Louise had a little bit of a different path as well.
Yeah, mine was sales marketing for 10 years, and then I realised that it was destroying my soul.
I hear you.
Yeah. Just always interested in it, and so I did a course, and then did an internship, and kind of I'm much more of a learn on the ground. So having met Lauren then in the industry, it was great to kind of put both of our experiences together, and we just kind of knew that it would be, I suppose our business ethos would be the same, and we both really just kind of wanted to work for ourselves and start this new venture. So that is how North was born. And it's been a busy 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years now you're in business.
Yeah, 4 in March.
4 next, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And where did the name North, where did that come about?
So we kind of, I suppose we were very much didn't want it to be our names. That was kind of our first and foremost thing with the name of the company. We wanted the company to be able to grow and not for it to always be us as the forefront of the company. So I suppose we had a Google document and we were throwing in names. It was everything under the sun. But we came up with the name North. Both of our dads are from the north of Ireland. So it's kind of a link back to them. And we wanted something punchy, just one word, and not, I suppose, associated with anything in particular. So that's where North came from.
Very good. Was there any other names that it could have been? Was there any close calls?
South. East,
West.
No, we had a handful, but there wasn't any, because like Lauren's dad is a photographer and mine's a joiner, so just that creativity we were talking about, like, well, where did we come from? And it was that, just to get it something personal to us, but really it being brandable as well, and memorable, short and sweet, because you know, sometimes the longer the name, the more difficult it is to market and all that sort of stuff. So that was what it was.
There was one, was it Creative Lane?
It could have been a flower shop.
Yeah, it could have been anything. So it was again, and it was 2 words. So we just really wanted one punchy word. So that's
excellent. And come here, since starting, like, so the first 2 years of business is always, it's always the challenge. Like most businesses, if they're going to go in the first while, it's in the first 2 years. And I remember that. I remember a watershed moment for me when I started back in 2000. What have you found being the most challenging aspect of setting up the business and getting to nearly year 4?
So, a pandemic being out in the middle of it.
Right in the middle.
That wasn't ideal. I suppose with design and kind of setting up a design industry, people trust you from the projects that you've done before. So I think for us, setting up and not having a portfolio of work to go to people and be like, look, this is what we've done, this is what we've achieved. So we had a little bit of kind of, family work that we would have done and stuff like that. But I think that was the main, I suppose, hurdle to get over, was to get people to trust you enough and think that you're experienced enough to take on their home or their kind of commercial business or anything, just to trust you and give you the job. So I suppose to kind of get over that in the first month of kind of starting, we literally met with everybody we could, like friends, family. We were in some meetings and they're kind of like, yeah, I don't really have any links to interior design, and we're like, yeah, but you may know someone who do. So so we kind of, I suppose that was definitely a challenge, just to kind of establish yourselves and kind of make your mark in the industry. But we've been so lucky, we always say kind of, you don't realize how much people are willing to help and want to help you until you do something like that. And you do kind of set up, and people are just amazing. Like, the amount of contacts that people gave us and we still work with today is just, and it's amazing. It was really nice to kind of see that side.
Was there any point where you can pinpoint where there was just that turning point of going, okay, we've got to the start line and we're going? Because I remember when I set up, and it was like I had the yellow pages when I first set up, and I went through all the architects, couldn't get any work. And again, very much like yourself, had no portfolio. And I remember even one time checking the phone line in the phone to see it was unbelievable. But then I remember there was I did this like really cheap flyer and sent it around, and I was like literally down to my last month, and I said, right, I'll give it 4 weeks. Got a loan of money off my dad to get through another 4 weeks. But then I got an architect contacted me and started doing a couple of projects with them, and that was the turning point where I could start self-sustaining then after a month or two. Was there any particular moments or particular projects that you can pinpoint?
It's kind of, I suppose, once we had pitched for certain jobs with certain clients, say developers or whatever, and once they went well and you retained the relationship in those early stages and you're kind of proving yourself, that was when I think that we started to kind of be like, okay, well, because they're, outside the realm of, say, smaller residentials, that you're kind of like, right, well, this is a little bit possibly maybe more secure, or so definitely kind of having those relationships start to turn around. And like the graft is involved in that, because you're constantly like checking in and just you're very much like kind of whatever needs to be done, I'm going to do it, and we're going to prove ourselves and stuff. So I'd say probably in that sense, when those relationships started to develop, that's when we were like, okay, things are going well.
And even I think as well, when you start getting referrals, that was kind of a quite a turning point as well, because you kind of realize what you're doing is working, and they're actually, you're doing a good service, so much so that they're recommending you to their friends and family. And I think once that kind of started, that it almost starts rolling then. That's when the business keeps coming in and you've a nice kind of steady line.
Word of mouth is the best.
Yeah, definitely. Tool, even kind of our first, publications, and, I think one of our first ones is the Sunday Business Post. We had a post in there, and I suppose for us it was huge, because it's like, oh, we're in the paper, you know, it's kind of a big thing. But from that, being in a very established, you know, paper, that brought us business as well, you know, and that kind of, I suppose, makes you look a little bit more established, and it brings in more work as well. But yeah, it definitely isn't easy.
You can say that again. But you mentioned a few minutes ago COVID, and I kind of want to touch on that. What impact did that have with you? Did you gain or lose business? And then I suppose, secondly, what was the trends that came out of the pandemic?
Yeah, definitely a bit of both. Obviously, in the beginning, I think everyone was in a bit of state of shock, and taking up hobbies left, right, and centre. So those, like, naturally, with all the sites closing, you know, we were just at the desk, and obviously everyone was kind of watching the purse strings and terrified as to what was going to happen. So definitely those first few months that followed in March 2020 was quiet. And then it was kind of when it started to pick back up. So when things started opening in June, July again, the inquiries just like started flooding in, and it was because people had gone through those like 5 months of, okay, well, we haven't spent any money, and like we're not going anywhere anytime soon, and people were reevaluating in terms of, okay, well, perhaps it's way too risky to sell now, so let's work with what we've got. So in that sense, like we hate to say it, because we feel that we could be one of the industries that have benefited from such a tragedy, but it's kind of like the people who've just reassessed their homes, they've reassessed the way they live, and they're all readapting. So whether that's our smaller service, which focuses on 3 rooms, and it's just a package that suits a lot of people, for people who are looking to like finish their home, or they just want to get a home office, or, you know, they just like kind of those bits in the house that they need to kind of wrap up, or else the interior architecture side where they're going, okay, well, we're not moving house, let's like revamp the one we have. So from that sense, that really has grown legs.
I'd imagine that the home office and utility room are the two big asks.
Yeah. And as well, I suppose people were spending so much time in their homes. So I suppose before the pandemic, we would have had clients coming to us and kind of asking us, you know, what do you think we should do here, or what would the layout? But we were finding clients were coming to us going, this is what we need, because, you know, they knew exactly what they needed. They've never spent so much time at home, and whether they knew exactly, they obviously didn't know how to implement it, but they were very, you know, strong on exactly the criteria that we needed to meet. Things like, I suppose, the open plan living, you know, that went through a phase of just being so popular. Like, everybody wanted these open plan spaces. That was all fine and well when you were away at your job from 9 to 5, and then you came back and had family time in the evening. But
not anymore.
Yeah, when the kids are screaming and you're on a work call, it doesn't work that way. So very much kind of finding that adaptable, being able to close spaces off while keeping it open plan. Very much kind of at the forefront of what people were looking for, along with the likes of the home offices and a place to lock yourself away and take a breath.
So like because the work you do, it's very much focusing on the existing shell or existing layouts. So that's one part of the business. Then you obviously work with developers on the resi side, so doing show houses and stuff like that, and then the commercial side. But it's interesting, that package, I'd say that's become even more, it's just continued to grow for you, has it?
Hugely. Like we it's always been a service that has kind of ticked away, and we would do a couple a month, and you know, it was always a very kind of good service, but we've never had so much inquiries for it. Like for the last few months, we've had a waiting list for it. You know, and we don't, you know, it's amazing, but we don't want a waiting list for it. You know, we want to be able to keep rolling them out and doing it. So it just goes to show that people, it really works for that type of kind of, I suppose, client who is just looking for
the few spaces
to remodel.
And then it's up to the client. Like, once you do your design, then the client can go off, obviously, and purchase everything that you've designed for the space. Or do you follow through and actually continue on that service as well? Is there an option for that?
No, so the way it would work would be we would meet with the client. So each, I suppose, consultation focuses on 3 areas. So if you have more than that, you can do 6. So we basically would do 2 packages. So we would meet initially and go through the 3 areas that you'd want to look at. And then we go away and we do up a pack, and we'll meet with you a final time to deliver it. But in short, it is a pack that you take and you have all of the information that you can carry out the works yourself, which is great because, you know, a lot of people aren't in a position where they can just have us to come in and redo the 3 rooms all at once.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, they can sit down and go, okay, well, what's our priority here? Okay, well, the kitchen is, so they'll do that this year, and then they'll have the pack to implement maybe the living room next year, or, you know, so they can really, I suppose, implement it as they I suppose wish. Yeah,
it's a more affordable option, because obviously the interior architecture side we're doing full project management and stuff, so it just allows us to help to kind of clientele, whilst keeping that side busy anyway.
And how that package came about was initially we were doing just in the interior architecture, but we found clients were coming to us not needing a full house renovation. You know, they were just looking for colours, or a lot of people who would buy a new build, so they basically have a shell and they don't know, you know, what colours to put on the wall or where to put joinery, and, you know, they have this blank canvas. So we find it kind of, we were turning away the clients who had that smaller, you know, workload that we really didn't want to do, and we wanted to be able to facilitate the smaller projects as well as the larger kind of full renovation. So it's great that we can kind of, I suppose, offer that service to everybody.
And it's interesting you mentioned colours, right? Would you rank colours as being one of the most important pieces of the puzzle to get right for interior design or furniture? The reason I ask is I went through painting a house recently when I didn't, and my wife Elsa picked all the colours, and painstakingly so. I just didn't have the headspace for it, and they've proven to be so important.
Yeah, definitely, and especially if you are, like, depending on what you're doing within the space, or if you're not doing much in terms of layout changes, you know, function, bespoke joinery, whatever, like the impact of colour is so strong, and we always find it's the most overwhelming for the client, because they're like, oh no, that blue, no, that blue,
grey.
But that's why it's good sometimes that we can do it for them. So
and it's a minefield. There are so many colours, so many brands, and I think just to have someone in and kind of even help narrow it down to a point where you can kind of go from. But yeah, we always say, like, it is such a scary thing, and painting a room, but we always say, like, it is just paint as well, and you can work with it. It's probably the most versatile, you know, way of injecting colour. Whereas if you're buying a sofa, that's a huge investment, and you obviously want to get that right. But paint is just colour.
Yeah. And on that, I suppose your style of the work that you do, we've had the pleasure of working with you on a few projects, and I personally am a big fan of your style. Nick has been talking about it all morning now as well. But I suppose, what drives your creative process there, and how do you go about your work?
It's very much client driven. So from the very beginning when we started North, like Lauren and I have both of our individual styles. If you walked into our homes, they're different. No more than all of our, like, so we have staff members now, and their style is very different. So we kind of never wanted, I suppose, our strong personal style to overtake that of the clients. And that brief stage for us, and you know, kind of digging deep into how they live and how they work, and or commercial clients, how their businesses run, then it's very thorough, because we're trying to get them to really dictate where we're going with it. And naturally we'll have our opinions, and, like, you know, they're hiring us for a reason, so we're going to try and lead it into areas that maybe they weren't brave enough to go to or whatever. But definitely it's all about their brief, and that's why a lot of people say that our portfolio is so varied, because it could go from something very minimalistic to something quite eclectic, and it's because it's the characters we meet, and that's what keeps it exciting for us. So it's very client driven. It's hard to kind of pinpoint the exact thing.
It's challenging though, isn't it? Because you would have, like, I'd imagine in projects, and like I know we've been focusing on the resi side, but like you've worked on some fab commercial projects, like the hotel in the Molineux Hotel, like, you know, which was a really funky design.
Yeah.
Like, and I think you were given a good bit of freedom, if I'm not mistaken, to stamp your design on that. So it's a real fine balance, though, isn't it? To be able to have that freedom, but then if you get a client who's very set in their ways and you're thinking, that's just not going to work. Like, how do you balance that?
It is definitely difficult, and
Bit of charm.
And I think as well, even I suppose the model of our business is that we design for the clients, and it is very much driven by their style. So sometimes it is really not our particular style, and it's challenging, and it's hard to kind of put yourself in there and kind of, I suppose, design for them. But it's also interesting, and it's what makes our job interesting. If we were banging out the same designs every day, you know, there's an element of you would kind of lose interest, I suppose, in that as well. But yeah, kind of going back to the hospitality and the hotel side of things, I suppose being given a brief where we can, you know, have full creative direction on a job is amazing. And we do get clients, like residential clients that do that, but very much on the hospitality side of things. And we love it because that's where we can really, you know, really get creative. And especially in that kind of hospitality, there's less limits. When it's someone's home, they're like, oh, I don't know about that light there. Whereas if it's a hotel, they're like, yeah, go for it. And it's a space for everybody to enjoy, and they want it to be as kind of, you know, the boundaries to be pushed as much as possible. Even in that one, Nick, the train, the bar in the basement, like that was so exciting for us to design. And even, you know, selling it to the client, you know, we're so excited and invested about it, and for that to be built is just, you know, it's so exciting. And to even see it in your guys' renders, and to have it come to life before it even goes to site, you know, it's really interesting, and it's an exciting part.
Yeah,
of
it's
it.
a pretty cool project now. You know, in terms of the design, and funny enough, I've always said it, like when you're doing CGI work, it's when you get that interesting design, whether it's exterior architecture and landscaping or interior architecture and design, the more the images stand much more off the page when there's good, well thought out design in it, like, you know what I mean? And it's just not your standard stuff, like, you know. So
well, even from your side, if there's more detail in what we're giving you in the brief, it makes everything seem so much more tangible and come to life. And like, it's one of the reasons why we like doing commercial work as well, that opportunity to actually get 3D renders, because you're like, yes, that's what I, you know, was thinking. And then suddenly if it comes into fruition then and the build happens, it's amazing to see the kind of it on paper essentially, and then in reality.
But even from a building perspective as well, for the builders and the trades and the contractors to have that visual to work from, like it's so good. Like, we've had builders come back and be like, you know, no, I can see it. Like this is what it's meant to look like. You know, it's great to have that. So it makes our life easier as well. Yeah, because we're like, there's a visual.
And on that, obviously we've worked together and we do 3D renders for some of your projects, commercial. What software do you use for communicating your designs to clients?
So generally with residential, we would do mood boards. So kind of very much Pinterest boards. We'd pin for the projects and put together mood boards from that. But we use, we hand sketch a lot. So we would do a lot of hand sketching on the iPad and then importing that into Photoshop and kind of overlaying on with the materials. We find for residential clients, that's kind of enough. It's you know, it's enough for us to kind of get the visual across and for them to envision the space. But then I suppose for larger commercial, like the hotel that we were talking about, and kind of some of the communal spaces for apartment blocks, we find, well, one, for marketing, for selling, you need the 3D render. It's really important. So I suppose that's when we would definitely always get the renders for those type of projects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, the 3D design is just so important, like, you know.
Good wedge in there, Kevin. Good wedge in there.
I feel
very subtle.
You have to be very subtle with these things, you know, get into people's heads subconsciously, you know.
Yeah, it is. It's good, and I think we have a good kind of system that we use in order, like working with you guys as well to produce the renders. It's.
I didn't know you hand sketch actually, because I didn't know you were a Montessori. Well, trained to be a Montessori teacher.
Yeah. Not practicing.
Yeah. Well, you never know now with Louise.
I know.
This time, like
we can set up another side of the business in Montessori. It might come in handy.
Because it's mad, because the type of, like, I can't draw, like, so like I'm an engineer by profession. I always wanted to do architecture, didn't get anywhere near the points for architecture, so went in, did engineering, but sort of have come full circle, so somewhat. But I can't, it's mad, because people say to me, oh, do you hand sketch stuff, or did you in the beginning when you set up the business? I can't draw. The best I can do is a matchstick man or woman. Like, seriously, it's unreal. People don't understand. So it's really interesting, the hand sketches. And sometimes, I think sometimes, like, we were asked to do a job recently. I met someone, there's a whole new plan for Blackrock and a plaza out the back of near the Dart station. And I remember sitting down with one of the people that was heading it up and stuff, and they were like, oh, we want to get renders done for it. And we had done a project previously over in Balbriggan, and they were very photorealistic. And sometimes the hand drawings for spaces like that, or interior spaces, are better because it's just a sort of conceptual feel to it. It's so, because the renders that are produced now are just so photorealistic. It's like, that's it, you know, people just think that's it, and then they get hung up on little details, whereas sometimes the hand sketch, so I saw the hand sketch for the Blackrock Plaza, and it's very conceptual, but people, I think, can sometimes buy into that more, and you probably find that with the resi side of stuff on the smaller scale.
Definitely, yeah. And like Laura mentioned, obviously, like in the initial concept stage, you're doing the mood boards and the like hand sketches. But even when you go through to doing the drawing packages to send out to tender, and you're going through that with a client, and even though like we're like there's heaps of detail in there, it's flat. They can't, like, some clients just can't like take it off the page. So having a sketch for them to refer to is just a lot, kind of, I don't know, like it comes to life in their brain more. So, and then like it doesn't, in terms of time management, you know, it doesn't, if we can get results from a hand sketch versus doing it on SketchUp or whatever, like it doesn't, the two don't, there's no comparison really, because we can do a hand sketch in half an hour versus, you know, and then especially if you're working on a program, you're like nitpicking yourself. With the sketch, you're just like loosely kind of hashing it out. So it definitely is a good tool. If you can draw.
And is that something like in the interior design course that you did, is that something that's taught, or is that just something you naturally have? Because I don't think, however much I got taught how to draw, I'm a bit like Nick. I'd even struggle with the matchstick men. Like,
I think practice makes perfect as well. Like, by no means like our earlier sketches were not good, but like it definitely, you know, you start to playing with scale and proportion and stuff like that. That just comes with practice. But I don't know necessarily if it's like a taught thing.
There's also an app that if you do,
we're getting to the bottom of it now.
It makes it easier.
Because most of our sketches are on iPad with the pencil. So in that sense, that just makes transferring it to Photoshop easier for us to layer on then.
Whereas our back in the day hand sketches, now we wouldn't be showing you those.
We did actually recently, a couple of months ago, a video that showed the quality of our work from, I believe, 2002 up to 2021, and it got good reaction. Like, you should find some of them earlier sketches and do the progress.
I know, and it's funny because it develops without you even knowing it. You know, it's probably only when you do actually stand back and look back and go, oh my god, look how much it's changed, because you just kind of adapt it for certain projects, and then you might take that way of adapting into the future projects and stuff. So we must do that.
Nothing to be embarrassed about.
In terms of growth now, like in terms of growing the business and stuff, where do you see it now? Like, with the two of you heading it up and taking staff on, training them up. Like, I suppose with interior architecture, it's slightly different it's different to what we do, but it's more challenging because I'd imagine that a lot of clients want you two on a project. Do you know what I mean? As opposed to not saying opposed to the team, but like they want you. It's kind of like, you know, you go to a physio, you want a specific physio to work on you, you know. So have you thought about that and how you manage that? Because you'll obviously have an overarching view of everything, of all the projects going out.
So definitely we kind of have seen that come up, and I suppose as well with referrals, say if Louise was working on a project and that was referred, or myself, you kind of get people kind of expecting that person to come along, and that was very much from the beginning the fundamental of it being North and not being our names, because when it's your names they expect you. So that was kind of our first step at the very beginning to try and kind of get away from that. But yeah, definitely what we're trying to do and what we're building on now. Like, we have Aoife working for us. She's a designer in with us, and it's very much a collective team. So there's no kind of, you don't know who you're going to get, but we all work on the projects. We all know what's going on. We check in twice a week to update each other on projects. So, you know, if Louise was to be out of the office, I can jump into her project. I know what's going on. So although I suppose you're not getting myself or Louise or Aoife, you know, you are getting us because we're all chipping in, and it's coming from North rather than a specific designer.
Even kind of when you're trying to manage time, project workload, like the fact that like I'm going to be now, you know, out of the office and
for a couple of weeks,
just
10 days max.
But like, there's no ignoring the fact that we are female business owners, and that is an aspect as well. So like, it's kind of like we will always need to make sure that our business and our brand is rock solid, and nobody needs to have any reservation about who's walking through their front door, because our, you know, the message that we've taught our staff members, and the, you know, what we all have the same work ethos and design ethos. So like, that should never be something that would make a client nervous if it wasn't one of us.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that we're obviously in the early stages of growing the business, and it's like Aoife's our first full-time hire, and we have another intern coming on. So that's a new kind of avenue for North to go down, and it's one we're excited about. We don't want to be a huge firm because we never want to lose, like, you know, the
personal aspect.
Yeah, the personal aspect, the relationships we've built, and constantly trying to sort of retain that, and that kind of like, you know, we're small but mighty.
Yeah.
I think as well it's the level of work. You know, obviously North started with Louise and I, and we are so proud of kind of what we've achieved in the last 3.5, almost 4 years, and to have kind of employees come in, we're very dedicated to making sure that they have the training, they know what they're doing, the work is up to scratch. And I suppose we would always oversee everything before it leaves. We never let anything leave. We would rather a timeline kind of be pushed out and for the work to be absolutely perfect than delivering something that is not North, and that's not something that we would stand over. So we're putting kind of, I suppose, things into place, and like I said, we review kind of twice a week to ensure that level of standard is met. And I suppose that's so important for us, rather than kind of who you're getting. It's the level of work and I suppose the service that we're getting.
You're dead right, because that was one thing when we rebranded in 2015, like we were Third Dimension, then we rebranded the 3D Design Bureau to try and lose the shackles of the recession. But it was a real goal of ours to be that brand that you know, that everyone who comes into the company buys into the brand, buys into the direction they're going. You know, that projects can cross from one person in a team to another. That's a real important part of this industry, you know, that you're suddenly, you know, oh, we can't deal with that project for 3 weeks because someone's on holidays, or like, it's really important. And the brand, and that people, clients and stuff buy into it, but know that there's people behind it as well.
Yes.
That there's a good team behind it. That's really important.
Exactly. And I think as well, I suppose, from the than not having a specific style. So you're not coming to me for my style, or you know, Louise for her style, or Aoife for her. You know, the style is coming, and the design is coming from the client, and we're kind of collectively working for them. So I suppose that's kind of where that comes from.
Yeah, so you never lose that. Obviously, if you're to grow exponentially, it's very difficult to hold on to those values and your creative process. But Lauren and Louise, we've kept you for almost 35 minutes, and I know how busy you are. So, are you happy enough with that?
Yes.
Nick, you're happy. Always happy.
Yeah, all good. I thought it was really good. Good insight into the interior design on architecture area, so it's really good because when you're working together, you don't get that, you know, you see the designs coming through, and we do our work and you do your work, but it's always good to get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks very much for coming on, guys. So with the podcast, you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, the live one with our lovely faces is on YouTube, so if you're squeamish, don't go for that one. I'm talking about me and Nick now. Good save. But tune in, get in touch at 3D Design Bureau on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram if you want to get in touch with us. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks very much for that, guys.
Thank you.
Guys.
Bye.
Bye now.
Alrighty. Talk to you.